Hello, everybody. I'm here once again with Kemal Yildirim.
That's the one.
Yeah, see, that's what I was going to do the first time, but there we go. So, um, as you would have seen in his Meet the Actor little interview, he did mention a film that he was acting in called Wastelands. But before we jump into the main set of questions, I will let you tell people a little bit of a synopsis of what the film's about.
Okay, so firstly, thanks very much for having me on. I really appreciate you having me on. Wastelands is firstly, it's a story that I've been wanting to tell for a while. It covers a lot of issues based around mental health and about people that are afflicted with certain conditions. And the story revolves around Alice, who basically tries to shut her demons out on a daily basis while she's trying to cope with these conditions that she has. And then one day her father is thrust back in her life, who's suffering from a terminal illness. And that terminal illness and having to care for her father starts to fracture her mind even more. And while trying to deal with it, she calls her lover back into her life. And then that spirals her journey down even more into kind of finding a lot more about herself. So I'd pitched the film as an art house film mixed with psychological drama. That's what it is. It sits in slap bang in the middle of those
That's
two.
how I would have described it, as a psychological drama. So,
Yeah.
so this is basically a full-length feature of your short film. So how long did you go from that short film to doing this feature film?
Oh, well, as you know, making films was always a long process. We made this short back in 2000, and I started it in 2017.
Yeah.
Shot it in 2018. And the short film was an interesting exercise because it was a couple of my own life experiences that I combined together to kind of make this short story, almost to kind of exercise some of my own demons, really, and put it in film form. And I always knew that the character of Alice, I wanted to develop more and push into a feature film. So I always had, while making the short, I always had a feature film in mind. The short, we shot it over a long weekend. It went really, really well. We cast it really well. The main girl was fantastic in it. And it went off, and it actually did really, really well at film festivals. It won numerous awards, and it got into numerous festivals, and we got really good reviews for it. So that kind of spurred me on to kind of create the feature film. But the feature film is completely different from the short film. So anyone who was to see the short film shouldn't really go into it thinking they're going to see
The
a similar
sort of
film.
Yeah.
Because it is very different. It is very, very different. And I always knew it was going to be different. I just kind of plucked out 3 of the characters and put them in this feature film, because that's kind of the way that I write stories. Is I don't necessarily go, oh, I want to make a vampire film, or I want to make a werewolf film. So what I'll do is I'll just put all these people there, cannon fodder, waiting to be killed. I don't really make films that way. I really get interested in characters. So and the character of Alice has been with me for about 10 years. That I've been developing her character for 10 years. And I know that character will be in a couple of films, not just one, it'll be in a couple of films. So I work on character. And maybe that's because I've got an acting background, so I'm very interested in fully fledged out characters. So I always work on characters first. So Alice has been with me for a long time. And I knew that when I was doing the feature film, I wanted to develop that in a much more organic and exploratory way. So I knew that I needed to find the right actor involved. And although the lady that played Alice in the short was superb in the short film, she just wasn't right. And she agreed too. It was a very mutual decision that when I was taking it to the feature, that she wasn't really the right person for me to take it forward. So then we started the casting process. Wow. That took 7 months of casting to be able to find the right. And now that you've seen the film, you kind of understand that it's a very hard character to play.
Well, I thought that anyway when I was watching it. I thought this is a role that, if you know somebody that's got mental health or anything like that, it will be something that potentially, if you can't break away from being the actor character, you may potentially take that stuff home with you, and it probably could affect you. So yeah, you have to have the decent sort of person to play it.
Absolutely. And it was so, I mean, we went through, I mean, firstly, we had a brilliant response to sending out to the audition process, because we actually got 1,000 application through, and but that quickly whittled down when I sent the script, because as soon as I sent the script, a lot of people dropped out, but all of them come back to me with what an amazing script, but it's not right for me. It's not where I'm going as an actor. It's not what I want to explore as an actor, and all that, which is fair enough, because it's like I said in my last interview with you, that an actor needs to know what they're doing, roles that they're going for. And that, for me, you know, I have a lot of respect for actors that know what they want to do and they're going for it. So it whittled down very quickly to a couple of hundred people that are interested. But then obviously we have to whittle that down, because we can't see, we're a small production, we can't see that many people for the role. So it was much more about looking at the show reels, talking to the person to see if they're right to bring down for an audition. We whittled that down over a period of about 7 months of seeing I think it was about 25 people that we saw for the role. So and it was a vast range of different kinds of people. And we just weren't finding the right person. It just wasn't clicking. There was just something missing. And I knew that it was not necessarily about the actor's ability, because I believe if an actor is an actor, if you put the right, you know, dynamics around them, an actor can give you a great performance. For me, it was about finding the right person, the right individual that kind of understood what I was trying to do and really took the character, because that was also one of my parameters in my casting, was that the actor is responsible for developing the character with me. So it's not just me telling you 100% this is what you need to do. It was them bringing something to the table. So you know, we went, you know, to cut a long story short, we went through a lot of auditions, and then we managed to find 3 people that were very interested in to screen test. And then we went through the screen test process, which was a pretty, you know, arduous process, screen test, because obviously we wanted to let them know what the film was going to be and how it was going to be done. So we kind of gave them a taster, and then I found, you know, and then in walks in Natasha Linton, who played Alice, and straight away from her first audition, for me, she was Alice straight away. The way she handled herself, her intellect level in terms of understanding the character and where I was coming from and the way I was trying to capture it. And also, she wasn't fazed by the material, because you could see that the material was written in a way that it wasn't trying to exploit anything, and it was just trying to explore. And she was excited by that. And she did her screen test, and by that point I already knew, but I kind of had to do that because my co-producer had somebody else in mind. So the 2 of us were battling for who that person was going to be. And obviously, because it's my baby, he relinquished all responsibility to me and said, go with who your heart says. And it was always with Natasha as soon as she walked in, because she was just that right person.
Well, I think you did an exceptional job with that.
Yeah, I do too. I really do. I'm so proud of her performance in the film. I think she's superb. She's a superb talent.
So now you've done a bit of selling for your baby, as you put it. Now we're going to get into the hard stuff now.
It's my baby.
How did you? Well, you kind of went into this a little bit with the acting one, but how did you get into filmmaking? So you caught the bug, you know, coming along across a VHS camera. Remember those big old things? So you went from there, and then you went into filmmaking. So how did you get into it from there?
Yeah, it was really at a period where, because I started out as an actor, so it was getting that bug for acting. But then when the person that kind of influenced me most in my younger years went off and went to uni and got a career of his own, I was left with this camera by myself. And it automatically, when I started making my own films, I realized that the power of creating stories visually for me was it straight away struck a chord with me. And not to say that I was an instant great filmmaker, because I made a ton of really bad films, and I think that's the best way to learn. You know, I made
learn from your mistakes.
And even a couple of years ago, I made bad films. You know, it's always a learning curve. You know, there's no such. You know, we're not all born Kubrick. You know, it is a learning curve for us to understand the art of storytelling and filmmaking. And but I knew it was the career that I needed to have, and it was what I needed to do, because I've suffered mental health issues of my own, and I'm exploring that in Wasteland, some of my own particular issues. But filmmaking for me was always something that kept me on that right path, and it kept me in moments of crisis. It was always something that could take me away from that. You know, if I'd dip into a film and it would just take me away from any issues that I was having, and I could hide in this film and just explore a different world almost. And so I knew that was what I wanted to explore. So I kind of had that bug from a very young age, but then it really didn't hit me. I didn't really have the confidence to be a filmmaker until I think I was about 19 years old. I'd made a short film, and a friend of mine who I respect a lot, called Monica, she's a lifelong friend who I'm still friends with now. She watched the film and she said, and I was going down a bit of a dark path at the time. I was hanging around, you know, with people that I probably shouldn't have, and I was going down a wrong path. And she kind of sat me down. She was a little bit older than me. She sat me down and said, "What are you doing? You've got a skill here. You've got a talent. You need to focus on something." And it was that conversation I had with Monica, who kind of saw the talent in her eyes in this short film. And that kind of spurred me to then go off to college and make something of it and pursue it in a much more, you know, realistic, real way. And then I started the arduous process of trying to become a filmmaker, which I'm still doing now.
Yeah. So, well, you kind of went over this anyway, but what was your first film project? So say your first short film that you either wrote or directed, and we'll do the same thing for a feature film as well.
Oh, I think the first one, because as a kid, I was obsessed with two genres mainly, and it was martial arts and horror.
Yeah.
So it was. I think the film was a combination of a martial arts film mixed with a horror film. So it was a complete hybrid mixed genre film, and I think it was called The Masked Killer or something stupid like that. And it was about a masked killer that was chasing these two young boys, and they were fighting back with their martial arts skills to try and beat a killer with a knife. Which is completely insane and ridiculous. But that was the first film where I kind of wrote a script and I had a little storyboard written, and you know, and back then we didn't really have editing equipment, because this was back in the early 90s, so I didn't have access to that. So we learned in camera editing, and that's the way we made our films. So we'd structure a scene in our heads, and we'd know exactly what we were going to do in that shot, and then we'd cut, carry on, and so I learned the art of filmmaking, really, and the art of editing while I was filming. So we learned from a very young age how to kind of make these films, which were really, really bad. But so much fun, you know. It's all grounding, isn't it?
Yes. So, well, how long have you been doing it then? Yeah. Oh, yes.
Oh, making films. Oh, yeah. God. Well, since I was 13, 14.
As a director?
Well, I say as a director, officially, if we're talking about officially, professionally, probably about 20 years. Yeah. My first proper production was a film that I did while I was in college. I made a feature film while I was in college, which is, I don't know, what an idiot. I don't know what I was thinking. And my teacher said the same thing, you know, because I used to brag saying how easy it is to make a feature film, you know, why don't people do more, blah, blah, blah. And my teacher kept going, "You're insane. You don't know how difficult it is to make a feature film." And I was like, "I can make a feature film. It's easy." So he said, "Okay, here's a camera. Here's a professional camera. Here's some tapes, and here's a location that you've got for 2 weeks. Go make a feature film." So that kind of spurred me on to kind of go and write a script called Shades of a Killer, which I made back in 1996, I think it was, 1997. And I went on about a 2-year journey of trying to make this feature film while I was studying in college at the same time. And I managed to complete it. So that was a really big, you know, boost for me as a young filmmaker. It was a really big boost for me. And it did well locally. You know, it got screened locally, and you know, we had audiences that were watching my film for the first time, which is absolutely excruciatingly awful when they watch it for the first time. Especially looking back how bad it was, but you know, it was all a learning curve, and it was all a learning experience. So yeah, that was my first film. So Shades of a Killer back in 1996, I think, was my first feature film that I did when I was 19.
Yeah. So I'm sure you'll want to talk about certain projects that you have won awards for at festivals, etc. So the question's similar to the one you had in the actor one, which is what have you worked on or currently working on? So do you want to talk about your films that you've had in festivals that have actually done very well, probably better than you thought they may have done?
Yeah, absolutely. My first real success came when I did a short film called Rose. That was my first kind of taste of the festival circuit and what level of success you could begin to reach. So it was based on actually a tragic story of a friend of mine who got stuck in a life of drugs and prostitution, and it was a very dark period of her life. And she asked me if I would turn it into a story or a film or something, because she knew that I was in the arts and I was interested in filmmaking. So I turned that into a short film called Rose, and I was lucky enough to have a BAFTA-winning actor play one of the lead roles in it, because a guy that was going to act in it dropped out, and his friend just happened to be a BAFTA-winning actor who'd been on a TV show called Cops and all this stuff, so he did really, really well. So he came on board, loved the script, absolutely loved the script, completely got what the film was about, and that was a big turning point for me as a filmmaker. Because before that, I hadn't really made a serious film. Which I still am in a way, but I was making exploitation type films and very low budget hokey type horror films that I absolutely love watching, but wasn't really where I wanted to go down as a filmmaker. So Rose was my first serious film. And that went off and did really, really well. We actually got into, we got it screened in Cannes, and that got a special mention award. And then that sparked a lot of media interest in this little film, that had come from nowhere and just, got some credibility behind it. So then we started to develop it as a feature, because this is usually the way that I work. If I have an idea, I test the short film, and then if it's got legs, if I feel it's got legs, I push it in as a feature. And then so we started developing it as a feature. So that started a 4-year journey of getting it into development, which literally it was. I think that's why I started going bold. The stress of that, because we then, obviously after the success of the short, we had a producer that came on board who wanted to help us produce it. I then managed to get an incredible writer on board, Stephen Lovelace, who was a Daphne du Maurier winning writer. The guy's writing is superb, and he just happens to live in my hometown. And I kind of knew him over the years, but I didn't really know him well enough to work with him. And then a friend put us together and said, work together, and we developed. Over this 4-year period, we kept developing this script, but we kept getting knockbacks, and we kept getting, which happens to so many filmmakers, we kept getting right to the point where we were getting financed, and then the financing would drop. Yeah, we'd get named actors attached, but then we couldn't close the deals quick enough, so then they'd go on to other projects, and we went through a 4-year back and forth period of trying to make this film. And in the end, I said, because I'm a guerrilla filmmaker at heart, I said, right, if I don't make it by this point, I'm going to go ahead and make it myself. So then I took the bull by the horns, raised independent finance, and we went and shot Rose, the feature film. And that was a hair-raising experience. It was my first time working with a big cast and crew, and it was my first time, of my own project. It was my first time handling other people's money. Which was a scary, scary process, especially as an independent filmmaker, because you've got a lot of people looking at you for different things, and it's a scary process. But at the same time, it's one that I wanted, and it's a one that I went running at full steam ahead. And we made the film over I think it was 20 days, and we shot it in 20 days, I think it was, and it was really long days. Like, I pushed these actors and crew to the limit, and by the end of it, none of them spoke to me again. And I completely understand why. I totally get it, because I was so driven to get this film made that I'd get literally maniacal to get it made, and we got it made, and it did really well on the festival circuit. but hasn't done well in distribution. It's kind of faltered a little bit in the distribution process. But it's a film that I'm massively proud of, because it's a film, first of all, that I think the cast and crew did an incredible job with the constraints that we had. And it was a film, it was my first testing ground as a filmmaker, I think, my first real test. And I came out of it still wanting to make films. So for me, it's a success on that level. But, you know, we got it released. It's released on DVD in the States and some other countries. Still not in the UK, which I'm still trying to work on to get a UK release, because I really want to get it in the UK physical media market, because it's on VOD, but I want a physical media release, because I know physical media is dying. Everyone's going to me, what are you talking about? But for me, I'm a collector. You know, I've got over nearly 3,000 DVDs. I love collecting.
Well, and in the past, we've had this conversation before about physical media. The thing is with streaming sites is somebody can go, like, I know all this behind me, go, I'm going to get rid of all it because it's on streaming sites, but it only stays on there for as long as they're getting the algorithm saying people are buying it, want to get, then they get rid of it, and then you go, oh, I need to go out and buy my favorite film again. So you might as well just stick with the physical media. It's so much easier.
Exactly. Don't get me wrong. I love VOD as well. I think VOD can work junction with physical media, but you know, for me, I'm a physical media fan, so I really wanted a UK release for Rose, and I haven't managed to achieve that. So it's a little bit of a thorn in my side, that one. I'm still working on trying to get a distributor to release it in the UK, because I think it should be released in the UK because it's a UK film. Yeah, and it's very British. The film is very British. But yeah, so that was my first big one, and I absolutely adored working on that. And then I went for a period of trying to develop a couple of projects which really didn't get off the ground very well. And then, because at the time I met a chap called Jack James who was working on Rose with me. He was the behind the scenes guy, so he was directing a behind the scenes documentary about the making of Rose. And me and him clicked. You know, we had a certain way that we saw films. We had very similar interests on what we wanted to explore. And he was writing a script for a film, and he presented me with the script and goes, look, I've got this character, I'd really love you to, because I really wanted to try and get back into my acting as well. And he presented me with it, and I looked at the script, instantly fell in love with the script, instantly fell in love with the character, and I was like, I have to do this. So me and him, we co-produced the film together, and we developed it. It was called Malady. And that film went on and did extremely well. It went on and won multiple awards at festivals, and it was a great, for me as an actor, it was a dream project because it was a dream character to play. And Jack was adopting a lot of my own particular approach when it comes to acting and directing. So that was also made it easier for me to transition into that, because I have a specific way that I work as an actor. So I wanted that chance to explore that way of working while doing this. And because Jack's obviously, it was his first film, he was very open to kind of, let's try and explore and do stuff. So I was allowed to kind of explore that, and the film went and did really, really well. I'm massively proud of it. So if you haven't checked out Malady, go check it out. Jack did an incredible job with that film. So I'm really proud of the film itself. So yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can waffle on all night. You asked me another question.
I was about to. Don't worry. I was going. This is the question that I know you're going to be very passionate about. So, anybody watching, get comfy, get your drink, because he's going to go on for a bit now. So, what advice would you give to people wanting to get into the film industry? So, not this. You did the actor part, but this is going behind the camera, doing all the, the money, changing hands, writing scripts, getting the right people, going mental, that kind of stuff.
It's a good mental.
Yeah, it's a good mental.
It's a good mental. I mean, if you have a passion for film and it's your calling, then, my advice would be, especially in this industry, the way it is at the moment, is don't talk about making a film.
Just do it.
So many people talk about making a film and they get so far and then they quit. Don't ever quit. The thing about this that I've learned in this industry, and that's, from very much a guerrilla filmmaker's perspective, is that you have to have tenacity in this industry, and you have to be ready for knockbacks, and you have to have ready, and you have to be ready for a lot of people questioning your motives and your abilities and all of these factors. These things you have to kind of learn to ride above and keep going. So the first thing, my first bit of advice would be, first of all, know yourself as a filmmaker, which only comes after making crap films. So you have to make some duds in order to know yourself as a filmmaker. You know, there's no such thing as a filmmaker that's born. You know, it's a learning craft. And maybe, you know, there's a couple of filmmakers that I'd say were probably born that way, like Kubrick, you know, one of my favourites. He probably came out of the womb that way because it was just so amazing. But for us, you know, for us people, we kind of have to learn the craft of filmmaking, and that's what it's about. So my advice is learn your craft, have tenacity in what you're doing. So don't take no for an answer, and also try and make films that are different from them. Because I'm sick and tired of seeing the same films over and over again. That, you know, it bores the living daylights out of me. So try and, if you have a story, try and think of your own way to tell it, and don't just emulate what I call the Tarantino generation, where you just watch a million films and emulate those million films.
Yeah,
that's not storytelling. That's not filmmaking. That's just literally, you know, copying other people. Try and I'm not saying that I'm not influenced. I'm hugely influenced by other filmmakers, but I try and put my own spin on what it is that I do. Even if I'm fooling myself and I'm totally influenced by someone, that's cool, because at least I'm trying to do that. And that's a piece of advice that I'd say to filmmakers, is try and have your own voice and try and figure that out as quick as you can, because it's going to make you a stronger filmmaker, because every filmmaker needs their own voice. I mean, if you want, I could go on and on about this. I mean, you know, other things that you could do as a filmmaker and you need to do as a filmmaker is you need to learn the business. That's something I didn't know when I started at all. And I'm still learning as we go along. Have a plan before you make the film. Don't make a film and then have a plan. Mm-hmm. So that, and I'm talking the distribution platforms. Yeah. Understand where you're going to distribute your film before you've shot your film. Don't shoot a film and then go, right, now what do I do with it? And I'm telling you this from experience. This is exactly what I did. I've totally done that. What you need to have is a plan of how you're going to release that film, or who you're going to target. I mean, I had a hit list of distributors before I even wrote one word on a page for Wastelands. I knew that only specific distributors that would probably release this film, because it's not a mainstream film, my latest film. So I knew that it was going to be a very limited or niche type of film. So I knew that I needed to hit certain distributors, but also I had a plan of a film festival route, because this type of film that I've just made, it needs to have a good festival run, and then find its right distributor. Unless I'm, you know, one of the very lucky few that just finds a distributor, which so far I haven't. So understand your path and make connections all the way along, and understand that filmmaking is a collaborative art. You know, when you can't, you know, realistically in this day and age, especially with indie film, you can't really just say you're an auteur and just do everything yourself. Yeah. The best thing to do is surround yourself with people that are good at what they do, understand your vision, and work as a unit to make that happen, and reach out to other filmmakers. You know, I'm doing that all the time, reaching out to other filmmakers saying, let's collab, let's work together.
That's one of the things I was going to say. It's probably a lot easier now with social media and everything, because you can obviously, network is the key word. With social media, of course, it's easier just to reach out to somebody now and go, hey, would you be, they say no, well, that's just a no, you can just ask somebody else. So.
Exactly. And because that's what it is. It is such a collaborative medium, and filmmakers, instead of seeing each other as competition, or that, you know, that film's going to go out and get distribution before me and do better than mine, we shouldn't be looking at that as filmmakers. You know, let the distributors do that. That's their job to sell the film, isn't it? Well, not just their job. We as the filmmakers need to sell our films, but it's their job to market the films in the way that they want to market it to reach the audiences. But us as filmmakers need to collaborate and work with each other in order to kind of, you know, help each other along the way. Because it's a very tough industry, and sometimes it can be quite a lonely industry when you're trying to make a film. You can feel, as a filmmaker, as a director, you can sometimes feel like it's you v all of these people. Yeah. And you've got to try and take that process out of it. and try and make it as collaborative as possible.
What's the first thing behind the camera that you kind of went, oh dear, I don't know where to start with this, basically?
Yeah, the most challenging part for me was writing a script. That to me is the most challenging part, because I'm a bit dyslexic. Mm-hmm. I find it difficult to kind of sometimes get the words from my head to the page the way that I want them to the way that I want it to come out. So what I do is, my writing process is very different. What I usually do is I write characters first. So I develop my characters in a very, very strong way and start putting them in scenarios.
Yeah.
And then make sure that the story bridges around those characters really, really, really well. So I think writing for me is probably the one where I was like, damn, I need a bit of help here. And that's why I've always worked with great writers. I've always been lucky enough to find great writers to work with. But at the same time, I'm now starting to find my flow with writing. I'm starting to understand my own way of writing. So I've now kind of jumped over that hurdle a little bit, and I'm now starting to write what I think, are fairly decent ideas and scripts, because I'm getting pretty good feedback on them. So it's just really, when you do find a stumbling block, you've got to teach yourself how to do it. I mean, when I first started to tackle proper editing, that was a difficult one, because obviously by that point I've never done anything like that. For me, it was always, we started out editing in cameras, and then I went from VHS to VHS editing. That's the way we did that back then. And then I went to reel editing. Mm-hmm. And then after that, all of a sudden these computers came out with these softwares that could edit. So it was a constant learning curve, especially in the 90s, because it was developing quite quickly. At a certain point, it started to develop very, very quickly. So editing was a big process, because really editing is probably, for me, the most, after you've written a solid script and you've shot, the on-set process, and you've shot as much as you can, editing is the most important part. The visual editing of the story is the most important part. It's the way that you can go back and actually tell your story again. You can direct the film again. So the editing for me is one part that I needed to learn, really, really learn and study. And I was lucky that I had a really good teacher that was kind of showing me, techniques. And I also did a New York Film Academy course, which was incredible, because I learned. I edited on a Steenbeck. I edited HD, when it first came out, and I was editing on these great machines. So, and I was also working with some brilliant editors that were, that really taught you the art of what storytelling is, and juxtaposition of shots are, and how important these things are. So editing was a massive learning curve. But I think for me, the most difficult part was writing when I first began.
Okay, well, it's your last one. Bit like the end of the Meet the Actor one. It's time to promote yourself. Website, anything. Promote yourself. Website, YouTube channel, any films. I would personally say, when film festivals are out again, and if your film does get into film festivals, which I hope it will, people should definitely go check it out. So that's my bit of promo for you. So it's not your chance.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, if anyone is really interested in my films, and especially if they they want to watch a bit of depressing cinema for a little while, you can check out my Facebook, which is my name, Kemal Yildirim, or you can go to my website, which is chemicalfilms.net. And from there, it leads to all my other festivals. If you're on Insta, you can check me out on Chemical Films, Chemical_Films. You can check me out on Insta. And Twitter, the handle is Kemal Yildirim. That's it. I try and keep it all simple.
Yeah, makes sense.
And IMDb is a really good source to kind of see what I'm working on next, and what I'm up to, and stuff. But yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. As I said, I wish you the best with all your upcoming projects. So
thank you very much. Hopefully when this lockdown ends.